Hey everyone, this is Hutch, lesson 1 for week 3. I'm so happy to be teaching to you today, even though it's really weird to do it to nobody. But you're there through the screen. Hi. All right. You should have Explain Everything open. If you can figure out how to have the video going at the same time, that's the most ideal situation. I saw Cole had his, somehow he shrunk the YouTube video and it was like playing in the corner while he had his Explain Everything out and open, which is pretty cool. I'll have to look into how to do that. Good thinking, buddy. So this is your mixed numbers page in Explain Everything. Then you have tasty treats. Then you have number bonds. This is the lesson 1 work that you need to have available. We're going to start off right here on the mixed numbers one. So go ahead and get to this on Explain Everything. Your objective today is I want to teach you about mixed numbers, improper fractions, and I want to teach you about decomposing a mixed number, which is going to set us up for adding and subtracting mixed numbers, mostly subtracting mixed numbers because they're a pain in the butt when you have to regroup. Before we get into that, let's go ahead and look at our word wall stuff here. I researched on my screen where things are because this is a green screen and I can't actually see it. It's green. I have to know where things are, pretend version. So I know that where the pencil is on Explain Everything is where my head is. Okay? So we'll move this down to the pencil. All right. Let's do this like we normally would. What is a numerator? A numerator is how many parts we're focusing on. So we'll talk a lot about that. Let's move numerator out of the way. What is a denominator? A denominator is how many equal parts in the whole. And remember, it's the size of the parts. Over here, now today we have mixed numbers. Mixed numbers is when you have wholes and then a fraction. Okay? Those two pieces. It's a whole number and a fraction. And then we have improper fractions. Improper fractions are when you have more than a whole in the numerator. When you have more than a whole, we know a whole is 2 over 2, 3 over 3, 4 over 4, 5 over 5, and so on. When you have more than a whole, you're just saying, oh, instead of 4/4, I have 5/4. I have 6/4, which is actually a whole and some extras. But we're saying it in an improper way, which is why they're called improper fractions. All right, on to the actual paper now. Take a look at this. So you can see that we have 2 wholes, and 1/4 left over, 1/4 extra. So right away we'll write equals 2, and this needs to be a large 2, and then the 1/4. Okay? Notice this is not 2 and 1/12. We're not counting up all the squares in these. We're just saying it's 2 wholes. I see the 2 wholes shaded in, and then there is 1 shaded, and we need to know about the denominator, which is the size of the pieces. It's 1 shaded of the 4th size pieces. So don't get confused by that. So it's 2 and 1/4. Now, today, I also want you to be able to represent this as an improper fraction. So what we'll do is we'll look at this, and an improper fraction is just basically you can't say how many wholes there are. You're going to represent all the pieces instead. So I cannot say 2 wholes. So what is a whole? A whole is 4/4 plus another 4/4 is 8/4 plus another 4th gets us 9/4. Now do start to look into this because you're all pretty darn smart. When I have something like 9/4, which is maybe right here, I don't know, 9/4, think about that. That's 1 whole is 4/4, 2 wholes is 8/4, and then the extra is 9/4. So think about how I'm thinking through that in my head. This is what I'd like you to do then. So let's speed it up a little bit. How many holes are there for the next one? Let's see. There are 3 holes right away. I'm going to write that down nice and big, a big 3. And how many extra are there as a fraction? 1 that I see that I'm focusing on. And what is the size of the parts? That's our denominator. The size of the parts are thirds. So I have 1/3 left over. Now let's change it to an improper fraction. An improper fraction, remember, is no holes. We're just identifying how many fractional parts are there, how many thirds are there. So I see 3/3, 6/3, 9/3. Notice how I'm counting by threes. It's almost like going, oh, I see 3 of them with 3 in each one. That's 3 times 3. Oh, so that's 9/3 with the extra is 10/3. Also think backwards. So if I had to go backwards, I could go, oh, 3/3, that's 1 hole. 6/3, that's 2 holes. 9/3, that's 3 holes. Oh, and the little extra, that little extra 1. So 3 holes and 1/3. So be thinking about that mental math aspect of that. All right, so I want you to continue that on with the rest of them on your own. You can either pause the video and then go do that, or keep watching. I think I'd rather you pause the video, do that, and then come back to the video for the next page. So do that. All right, if you didn't pause, then that was awkward. We're now on to tasty treats, so get that ready on your Explain Everything. This is the same concept, but with one little twist, and that is that on these last ones here, you can't see all of the pieces. So you have to look at the holes to identify the size of the pieces. It's basically the same thing, a good just practice with a little twist. I'm going to go ahead and model letter E here. Okay, so head right down to those loaves of bread. Right away, if we're identifying this one big loaf as a whole, I can see that I have 2 holes, which I'm going to do a big 2. 2 holes, and here's the problem. I can see that my numerator, if you count carefully, is 3, but it's a little harder just looking at that third section of loaves of bread. It's really hard to tell what the denominator is because I can't see the missing parts and things like that out of the whole. So I need to look at the whole and go, oh, how many parts are in a whole? And then count really carefully. I can see 1, and this, you got to, and maybe even zoom in really close here. So I can see 1, I'm going to count from the bottom, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So look how I did that with my little tick marks and zoomed in because I don't want to make a mistake. I identified there are 8 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 8 pieces in a whole. So the size of the pieces are eighths. Now I can go back to this and I can write 2 and 3/8. Now, I also want you to show the improper fraction. So we're getting practice going back and forth. So let's think. They don't want us to tell the whole number. They only want us to tell how many of the eighths there are. So name that whole. A whole is 8/8. So I have 8/8 plus 8/8 is 16/8. Plus the extra 17, 18, 19/8. Okay, so I'm going to write 19 over 8, or 19/8. Now, let's think backwards about this. If someone just showed me the 19/8 and you didn't see anything else, okay, and that's all I saw, and they said, hey, what is this as a mixed number? You'd have to think, oh, well, I can see what a whole is. A whole is out of 8, so it's 8/8. So let me think how many holes there are. 8/8, 16/8. I can't go to 24. That's more than what I have here. So 8/8, 16/8. So 2 holes and 17, 18, 19. Oh, 3 left over, and the size are eighths. So that's how we would get 2 3/8. All right, that's what you're doing for this section. So go ahead and do this page the same way that I just showed you. Go ahead and hit pause, work on this, and then come back to the video. It's like crickets. Number bonds. On to the last one for week 3, Hutch lesson 1. Number bonds are basically decomposing, but we're decomposing the whole number and decomposing the fraction. And I know some of you are like, oh, is he seriously making me do this? Yes, because it's a foundation for something more difficult later. I need you to be really strong with understanding, oh, I know what that whole is. Oh, I know what that fraction is if I break it down. If you can really understand that, then you'll have a really good concept of how fractions work and manipulating them and things like that. So these are called number bonds because it's one number bonded almost like molecules. You'll see they sort of look like that. I only want you to decompose the circled number. So if the fraction isn't circled, you don't have to decompose that. So I only want you to decompose these whole numbers for the top row, and then I want you to decompose the fraction for this row, and then down here, you actually need to decompose all of it to determine how many total halves there are. So let's take a look. We'll do a couple in each row, and then I'll let you do the rest on your own. All right, so first one here, right next to my face. I think if I planned it out right, it's right here. I hope it's right there. That's really embarrassing. All right, what we're going to do is we are going to decompose that whole number. So all I want you to think is, okay, it says 3 wholes, but in this fraction, what's a whole? So to prove my point with this, you need to be really good about this, is look at the denominator and go, oh, it's out of fourths. So that means 4/4 is a whole. So in this first problem, 4/4 is a whole. What's a whole in the next problem? The next problem is out of 8. So a whole is 8/8. And then look at the last problem. That last one is out of 4, so it's 4/4. Okay? So what we're going to be doing is you have to identify what a whole is in order to do this. So look at 3 wholes, and I want you to do this, okay? So a whole is 4/4. So you're going to pull away a little line, okay? We're making a little bond, and you're going to show that 3 wholes is 4/4, 4/4, and 4/4. So that's what this fraction is if you decompose it or break it apart. 4/4, 4/4, 4/4, and 3/4. Okay, let's look at the next one. Name that whole. What is a whole? A whole in this one is out of 8, meaning a whole is, do you know it? Hopefully you said 8/8. In this case, I have 2 of those wholes. Pull it apart in a little bond and show 8/8 and 8/8. So I want you to decompose this mixed number. All right, that last one is on you. Let's go down to decomposing the fraction then. This fraction is actually an improper fraction. Notice there's more in the numerator. So this fraction says 5/2. My question to you then is, how many halves is that? Again, name that whole. What is a whole? Nose hole. Mouth hole, ear hole, lots of holes. Anyway, we have 5 halves. How many halves are there? Well, there are 5 halves, but my question is, how many wholes is that? So you have to be careful. They're not asking you necessarily how many halves that is. So I want you to pull out a whole and then show the leftover. So this is a little bit different than you might be thinking. So watch what I do for this. First thing we're going to do is pull out a whole. So what is a whole? A whole is 2/2. Okay, so there's one whole. Do I have another whole in there? Let's see, 2/2. Another 2/2 would be 4/2. So yes, I do have another whole. So 2 over 2, 2 over 2. So that's 2 over 2, 4 over 2. I can't do another 2 over 2. That would be 6 over 2. So now I need to have the leftovers. So 2, 4, and then 1 over 2 left over. But look at that. That's 2 plus 1. That is 5 halves. It's 5 halves decomposed, but using the whole numbers. Okay, let's look at 8 thirds. My question is, how many wholes are in 8 thirds? Can you pull those out? Okay, so what's a whole? A whole is 3 over 3. Okay, so I'm going to see how many 3 over 3s I can pull out. There's one 3 over 3. Another 3 over 3. So 3 thirds, 6 thirds. Can I do another? No. Because that would be 9 thirds. I don't have 9 thirds. So 3 thirds, 6 thirds, and 2 thirds. 3, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So this is what you're doing when I want you to decompose an improper fraction. All right, take a look at the very bottom one here. The bottom one says 2 and 7 halves. And the question says, how many total halves are there in this mixed number? Decompose the mixed number to show it. So what I'd like you to do is I first want you to pull out how many wholes there are in 2 wholes. So what is that? Just like we did above. Okay. So a whole is, because it's in halves, is 2 over 2. So I'm going to pull out 2 halves and 2 halves. Now I also want you to pull out any wholes from 7 halves. Okay, but let's pull out the wholes first, then the leftovers. Okay, so we have 2 halves, 2 halves, 4 halves, and the leftover. See if you can finish that one off on your own, and then I want you to answer total how many halves there are. So we're going to have one final sentence, okay, saying there are, that's a little sloppy, there are, and you can write HALVES in 2 and 7 halves. So I want to know, how many halves are there really? Once you figure that out, count them all up. So 2 halves, 4 halves, 6 halves, and so on. How many halves are there? All right, once you finish all that up, you're going to shrink those up so that you can see the full screen. Shrink this one up to see the full screen. Shrink this one up to see the full screen. And you're going to separately screenshot these. Make sure when you're screenshotting that you then click your iPad real quick and you do the cropping if you know how to do that. It makes it really nice and neat. Once you have these put into your photos, then go to Class Dojo. We're not going to use the folders. I just want you to click Create New and go ahead and send me each of these documents. That'll be the process for everything. All right. Work hard. If you need to Zoom with me to literally have me go over this with you and teach it to you, that's fine. Then contact me and I'll do that with you. If you just have a question, you can submit a question through your portfolio if you want, or you can have your family contact me. They all have my number. Whatever you need to do, just know I'm here to help. Don't struggle on your own and ever get upset over anything. I'm here to help you. Work hard, kick butt. Love you. See you later.